on that. Okay, so the main focus here that I kind of wanted to go through and again talk to you guys about here with this video is to kind of highlight and talk about again the implications that are being made here. As I mentioned a little bit ago, the major one with education is that history is taught from a unique perspective, and the main claim here is that it is taught from a Euro ethnic position. That our history in the United States, from the founding of the nation up into modern history, is taught from a European perspective. And then in terms of how that influences the lessons that are taught, the manner in which humanities and social studies teachers are teaching their curriculum, that there is a tremendous amount of pushback into understanding what that means here. And so I think that is an important aspect to look at, and I certainly kind of want to go through here with you guys and talk a little bit about some of the different ways in which again textbooks handle this, the way in which teachers are taught about how to teach these things, and so on and so forth. And so that's where I really want to start with, is to talk a little bit about the manner in which teachers are taught. And so again, I'm just kind of speaking for myself, and I think this is pretty standard though. And I've been out of my prep classes now for over a decade, because I went through a non-traditional program at IUPUI where I got my master's in secondary education curriculum and instruction back in 2007, 2008. And so I've been out of the classroom, of the actual teacher training classrooms now for a while, but I would go venture to guess that this hasn't changed much. If so, it's probably gotten more radical. So again, I pulled some of the books that I kept when I was going through my grad classes, and I've got John Dewey, the Experience in Education manual here, which I know is very influential in terms of how students learn, very progressive. I've got Pedagogy of the Oppressed by Paulo Freire. Again, a Latin American, I think he's from South America, Brazil, if I'm not mistaken. This book is kind of a cornerstone in teacher training colleges, especially for social studies curriculum, in talking about how the American school system oppresses minorities in particular. And so, again, this is certainly something that is taught. Howard Zinn, A People's History of the United States. I was heavily, taught that the history that is taught in America's school system is biased, it is slanted, it is racist. I guess that's probably just the easiest way to summarize it. You can go, and I would encourage you to go to zinnedproject.org. That I'll post a link to that up in the Facebook page with the link to this video as well. Or I might try to put it in the notes to this video. So if you want to click on the link, you can go there. But Howard Zinn is somebody who's been extremely influential in teacher training colleges, again, specifically with training humanities-based teachers. And again, the Zinn Ed Project, if you go onto their website, you can see they've got teaching materials you can click on, and you can find a ton of different pre-made canned lessons with very much anti-norm slant to them. And again, that's kind of the structure here of what these lessons are all about. They're very much progressive, very much activist in terms of what they are teaching children to be activists. And I don't necessarily, at its face, have a problem with teaching our children to be engaged in the community at all. But these are very much about tearing down our social structures, because, again, at the root and the base of this is an acknowledgement that, much like the founders of the ideas of CRT have said, is that there is inherent bias and racism embedded into a lot of different aspects of this. So again, I would highly encourage you to check out the Zinn Education Project, Howard Zinn's A People's History of the United States. So I give you these so that you understand and know this is what teachers are reading. This is what young impressionable minds that are graduating from high school with aspirations of wanting to go out and teach children and be influencers and help out in their communities. And then they're being radicalized in the classroom with Marxist literature, with very radical ideas that are meant to calcify their hearts, that may be in the right spot initially, but they're taught that America's bad, our history is evil, you're evil because you're a certain race or whatever. Although then they'll turn around and say race is a social construct, so they kind of play both sides of that anyway. That is really important for us to understand. And I think there needs to be, and I've mentioned this before in a lot of videos that I've done and other talks that I've done before too, that we really also need to make sure that we're focusing heavily on teacher training colleges. Again, kind of as a sidebar, I know here with the Purple for Parents, a lot of you guys are really interested in the SEL curriculum, and I would highly encourage you to check out Connections. The education world is very small, quite honestly, especially here in the state of Indiana. Now, I can't speak from a national perspective, but here in the state of Indiana, I was digging around the other day and I saw somebody had posted information about what was going on in Clark Pleasant schools, and their superintendent, Dr. Patrick Spray, was my former superintendent when I taught at Cascade Mill Creek schools. His mother-in-law was the lady that ran the EPPSP program at Butler, which is the principal training program in the Graduate School of Education at Butler University, and they are heavily pushing SEL training to our future principals. So it's not just teachers; it's administrators. The school system that I taught at in public school last before I left, North Montgomery, their superintendent is really good friends with that former superintendent who was running the program, Dr. Jill J, down at Butler. She's since moved on and now works as a consultant. And so you can tie all of these pieces together and you can see the wave that's coming, and it's already here. You guys know that. But I just thought I'd kind of throw that out there as a caveat to make sure that we're not only holding our teachers accountable, but that we are talking with administrators. We are, and that includes superintendents, building principals, obviously our school boards and whatnot. And so again, understanding the full package of who all is being influenced here. It's not just a classroom teacher, although I would encourage you, as somebody again who's worked on the inside for a long time, always try to start with that classroom teacher, see what kind of resolution you get with that. Depending on the teacher, sometimes they'll be open, many times they're not. Quite honestly, most teachers have a very conceited attitude about education. Believe it or not, I know you're shocked by that. That they think they know what is best for every student in their classroom. And so they oftentimes, even if you come in with a very genuine approach and question, they will immediately get very defensive. And so if you don't get any kind of resolution or open-minded response from them, then yeah, I absolutely jump to the building principal, jump to the superintendent, the school board and whatnot. So that I think is really important there as well. So finally, just to kind of wrap this up here, and again, this is something that I wanted to try to raise on your radar here as well, is when you talk about the pressure that's being put on school systems by parents who are showing up to school board meetings, that's great. But as I said at the beginning, I'm also hearing a lot of teachers who are starting to come out and say, it doesn't really matter what you parents do. When that bell rings and I close the door, I'm in control. And that's scary, quite honestly, because even as a father of two boys who are both going to be in middle school next year, I oftentimes wonder about that. And I'm fortunate enough that the school system that my boys are in right now, I have not seen much yet coming through in the way of that curriculum, although I know it's embedded, I know it's in there, but I haven't seen a lot of it overtly being put into place. And so we're going to kind of keep an eye on that. But it is a concern that when that bell rings and the door closes, that teacher does have command of your children, day after day, 183 days a year or whatever it is now. That is somewhat frightening to think about. And so it is important for you to know, where are they getting their information from? Where are they being influenced in terms of the curriculum that they're using? So the first thing that I would encourage you to do is to check your child's textbook and find out what the approved textbook list is for your school system. And this goes beyond social studies classrooms as well, because so much of the humanities is built into even things like foreign language, language arts, obviously, and now science and math aren't even off limits to this in terms of how these concepts are being taught. So I would make sure that you start with that. Make sure you understand what the approved textbook list is for the district. Make sure that you understand and know what your children are using. Some of the popular textbooks to kind of be aware of, the Glencoe textbooks are really popular. You will also find Pearson to be a viable option as well. And obviously, too, a lot of places now, because of the digital aspect to this, are using digital copies through Apple iPods and Chromebooks and whatnot. So you can get access to that material even if your child says, we're not allowed to bring the textbook home, or we don't have a textbook that we bring. We just have a classroom set. You can find that information online as well. I found a copy of the Glencoe American History textbook and the government textbook just by doing a simple Google search, and you can find PDF versions online. And so, again, when you look at just the standard textbook narrative, there is information in here, obviously related to race, slavery, and again, most of the CRT advocates are going to say, well, it's not necessarily that it's being excluded; it's the way in which it's being taught. It's the fact that it's being taught from a Euro ethnic position, and it's kind of swept under the rug as like, well, here it happened, and we feel bad about it. We fought a war over it, and it's gone now, and we've got the Civil Rights Act, and we've done all of these things to try to improve racial relations in America. I guess just as a side note, I would say with all of that, look where we are still today in 2021. Obviously, we still have a long way to go. But again, it's that kind of concept and embedded narrative, I should say, that this isn't being taught, and that's just not accurate. It is not accurate, and please don't let anyone tell you different. If you hear anybody who's pro CRT tell you that racial issues and slavery and whatnot is not being taught in school, even the most layman. Listen, I've got a lot of issues with textbook curriculum, but even in the most mainstream textbooks, there is plenty of primary resources and plenty of textbook space that's given to teaching what slavery was as an institution, how it was brought to this continent, how it was used, the Southern society and economy, cotton is king, what slave plantations were like. Of course, it doesn't go into a ton of information with it, but you can only include so much, right? I mean, we have a difficult enough time as it is. And again, that's something else that I would, point out as an issue is how history is taught in terms of the content that's selected and how much time is dedicated into these topics and issues is something else that we could have discussions about as well. But suffice it to say that these issues are embedded, and it's not difficult too, by the way, for teachers to go out and find just a plethora of online canned lessons and curriculum related to these issues. If you just Google teaching slavery in schools, you will find hit after hit that talks about how awful our schools systems are in teaching slavery and its effects and how it operated whatnot. But as I mentioned, you can go to a number of different websites, and again, I'm going to give you just a couple to kind of be on the lookout for. These are areas in which most social studies teachers will go to find supplemental lessons. Again, if they're not overly thrilled with the textbook, or if they want supplemental lessons to what the curriculum is that they're teaching on. So the first one is called Enlightenment. So again, I will include the link to this in the description of this video. Enlightenment is a very popular resource for teachers to use. It's the National Endowment for the Humanities runs this. And you can find all kinds of lesson plans and resources. There's primary documents that you can find on this website that's got tons of information. And so again, I know a lot of teachers will utilize Excitement for supplemental lessons. You can find images, you can find slave narratives, you can find all different kinds of information on here, and that's very, very popular. The Gilder Lehrman Institute of American History is another one, gilderlehrman.org. Again, I'll link that for you as well. And you can find, again, just a plethora, a treasure trove of lessons and whatnot that are geared toward teaching the slave narrative from the position that CRT advocates and apologists are saying doesn't exist in our classes, but it does. And there are lots of teachers that are teaching this. I know specifically in the area which I live in central Indiana, and I'm in a western suburb. I know specifically teachers that utilize these resources as a core component to their curriculum, that they have taught books on the Tulsa race issues, that have taught about what life was like on a plantation and what life was like for slaves post Civil War in the Jim Crow South. Have taught about the civil rights movement. I mean, all of these claims that get made that aren't, say that these things aren't being taught, they are being taught. And so please don't let that narrative, rule the day there, because these things are absolutely being taught, and our teachers are being taught that our history is racist, that it's biased, that it's ethno-centered narrative is wrong. And I guess I would just kind of pause there to say, I don't know what they expect. When you hear that being presented to you, one of the things that I've started to kind of push back a little bit on is to say, but that's who the founders were, right? I mean, yes, African slaves and Africans in general and other minorities were part of the ingredients, part of the mixture of, forming this nation. But in terms of establishing the country, I mean, it's very clear that from a governmental perspective, and again, I know that there were influencers from outside of, the traditional, England, Scotland, France, so on and so forth. But that's who it was, right? It was the outgrowth of the Enlightenment that was occurring in Europe, at a time where people were fleeing religious persecution into what would become America. And yes, there are all kinds of issues in our history, and we want to address those, and we need to address those. We need to teach those, and I'm telling you that they are being taught. Now, they may not be satisfactory to the way in which some people would like for them to be, but they are being taught. So please don't let anyone tell you otherwise, because as I pointed out at the beginning, our young teachers are being radicalized in a Marxist, again, progressive ideology that says the founding of this history is evil, it's bad, it's racist, it's set up to keep people from being able to advance in society. And I absolutely disagree with that. I don't think that is the case here. So again, keep an eye on materials that come from these websites. Again, because I think they're overtly important to understanding the narrative of which your teachers are presenting content. Another very popular source that teachers will use is a website called Teachers Pay Teachers. And again, to me, I've advocated this ad nauseum. There are some good things on Teachers Pay Teacher. There are a lot of homeschool parents who have created lessons on there, and you can see where they've gotten their source information to put their lessons together. But I think oftentimes the danger in it is that Teachers Pay Teachers is used as kind of an emergency guide, a crutch, I would say, when a teacher doesn't really know what to do. When they're looking for something that's already created and they don't want to take the time and energy to create something themselves, they will go to Teachers Pay Teachers and they will use what someone else has done. And the problem with that is that you don't fully understand the perspective of what you're teaching. You just read policies and guidelines and procedures, and you just print printouts and videos and resources. Here, go do it, right? And then you don't really fully understand and immerse yourself into what it is that you're putting out there. So there's a little bit of danger in that as well. So I would highly encourage you to make sure that you are looking for where the resources are coming from, that your children are being fed in the classroom. PBS learning is another popular one. And of course, that is very much a left-leaning progressive curriculum that you'll get there as well. And so it can be very frustrating to know what your children are being taught. And then of course the wild card in all of that, right, is the teacher themselves. Because even if you present the most moderate, even keeled curriculum, it can definitely be molded, shaped into a message that becomes progressive, leftist in how it is presented in the classroom. And the teachers, we see these videos popping up all the time now of teachers going on rants and, just going crazy about, the America which we live in today. And of course, that was, even more common under President Trump. It'll be interesting to see what we see coming up next year when schools resume. But again, suffice it to say that those are all things to just kind of keep on your radar and make sure that you are aware of and understand. So I hope that this has been helpful for you. Again, I'm always open for questions, comments, feedback. Feel free to reach out to me on the Purple for Parents website, Facebook page, I should say. You can direct message me. You can email me. My email is justin.spears and the number 4 at gmail.com. I'm more than welcome to share my perspective with you. It's not always right. It's just my particular perspective on things. So I'm always happy to do that as well. So hopefully you found this helpful. Keep up the good fight. Keep putting the pressure on these school districts. You guys are doing a fantastic job. I absolutely love seeing the posts that are coming in on the website of people who are showing up and putting the pressure on keeping our schools as honest as possible. And so hopefully that will build some momentum as we move into next school year. Thank you so much. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.